September 23rd, 2022 was the day that allegedly someone almost died at Speaker's Corner. Now, to a lot of people, that probably doesn't ring too much of a surprise. Speaker's Corner is well known for having quite passionate debates, quite passionate speakers, people of whom perhaps sometimes use their fists or their hands in ways that they shouldn't. But nonetheless, it is pretty unusual that someone would actually come close to death at Speaker's Corner. But on September 23rd, 2022, just many months ago, this was the case. I'm talking about someone named Hatun Tash. So Hatun Tash is a regular at Speaker's Corner. Hatun Tash is someone who is an ex-Muslim who has repeatedly come to Speaker's Corner to spread the gospel and also to engage with Muslims, to evangelize to Muslims, to have debates with Muslims in a way that I guess you could only kind of describe as no holes barred, anything goes, I'm going to go for the jugular. You can see this by looking at the kind of clothing that she wears. Hatun Tash has frequently donned a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt. Hatun Tash has repeatedly brought in Qurans with holes in the Quran as a way of saying there is holes in the standard narrative when it comes to Islam. And for the most part, this is fine. For the most part, most Muslims don't have an issue with this. Most Muslims say they don't have an issue with this. Most Muslims don't really get violent. Most Muslims know how to handle themselves. There might be a few words said back and forth. Maybe someone says something not nice, and then that kind of ends it and people go their own ways. But there are cases in Speaker's Corner where it wasn't just that. It actually descended into something much worse. There are cases of Hatun Tash being attacked physically. There are cases of Hatun Tash being assaulted, people removing objects from underneath her, people trying to steal things from her, people trying to get her arrested. This woman has been through a lot in the past as a direct consequence of trying to evangelize to Muslims at Speaker's Corner. So who was the guy that almost did it? Well, it was a man called Edward Little, who allegedly, because his court trial is still ongoing, it's going, I think the court is due in July, but for the time being he has been arrested and awaiting his court day, and he has recently changed his plea from not guilty to guilty, and this is specifically under the charges of allegedly trying to buy a firearm for traveling from Brighton all the way up to London in a taxi with £5,000 in cash, then trying to use that £5,000 in cash to purchase a firearm in which to then shoot Hatun Tash. There are also allegations that he was not just going to attack Hatun Tash, but also the cameramen for Hatun Tash, and also for any nearby police or any armed guards or anything like that. He admitted that he was researching Hyde Park, specifically Speaker's Corner. He admitted that he was collecting money, raising money for this specific gun purchase that he was going to use to shoot Hatun Tash and others. And just reading from what I read in the BBC article today, supposedly as he was traveling to London in a taxi, he asked the taxi driver if he could stop off at a mosque on the way there. So you can infer from that as you wish. So in this BBC article, it says that when Little was interviewed regarding the alleged offense, Edward Little was shown a YouTube video of Hatun Tash preaching to Muslims at Speaker's Corner, to which he couldn't control himself, became enraged at this, and leapt over the table and had tried to assault the officer that was interviewing him. He then admitted guilt that he actually had now assaulted an officer, and actually got time in prison for assaulting that officer because they showed him the video of Hatun Tash. So clearly this guy has no self-control whatsoever. Now, one thing I want to bring up is when we look at all the different cases of violence that have happened at Speaker's Corner, particularly at people like Hatun Tash, there have always been those who have rushed to the defense of these people and try to make dishonest, insincere cop-outs for explaining why this keeps happening. And they keep saying things like, well, we don't know who it was, we don't know the motivation, we don't know the ideology, it could have been anyone and anything, who are we to say? But keep in mind, this BBC article says that the guy asked to stop off at a mosque. So this isn't just any ideology. This isn't just, you know, a bunch of really angry Quakers turn up to Speaker's Corner and wanted to have a word with Hatun Tash. This is something much more. And when we put this in context of all the other attempts at hurting Hatun Tash or taking our life or doing whatever it is, we don't see violence at Speaker's Corner from just any group. There are many atheists, agnostics, there's many Christians, there's many Jews, there's many Hindus, there's all sorts of different people there with different beliefs. And pretty much always, no violence comes out from that. It's been incredibly rare I've ever seen violence between atheists or Christians or any of those people from those different groups. But there's one particular group where that doesn't happen. Something changes. And it isn't just with that group and all the other groups. Sometimes it's just within that group and people within that group. Some sort of infighting whenever we see Sunnis and Shias wanting to fight, or Ahmadiyas and all these different groups within that one broad band of Islam, we notice that there's just some level of intolerance and some level of supremacy and fundamentalism that we don't see anywhere else. We all want Speaker's Corner to be a safe place, and we all want Speaker's Corner to be what it was intended for, to be a place of debate, of free speech, that people can come to with ideas and speak freely about these things. No one wants to go to Speaker's Corner thinking that they may end up dying. There are YouTube channels out there still that have videos that try and excuse this kind of behavior from this particular group. And they say things like, we don't know that this person was a Muslim. We don't know that this attack came from a Muslim. Yes, it was against Hatun Tash, and yes, Hatun Tash only talks about Islam and critiques just that and nothing else, but we have no proof that the person who was upset and attacked her was a Muslim. Well, I think it's fair to say in this alleged case, we do know this, because as the BBC reports, he tried to stop off in a mosque. That's not something that Jews or Christians tend to do. You know what, when was the last time you saw an atheist roaring to go to a mosque? I don't think it was. I think it's quite clearly, if this guy is found guilty, then it would be likely that he's a Muslim. Simple as that. So where do we go from here? I think it's important to call this stuff out, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. I want people to be aware that these things do happen. I think it's fair to say that this comes from one group in particular, more so than any other group. I think it's religiously motivated, and I think it's time we start calling it out and we start saying, we won't tolerate this at Speaker's Corner. We won't tolerate this in the UK or anywhere else. This is a place where people should be free to critique ideas, and that includes my ideas. I'm not in some sort of special category. As a Christian, feel free to talk about Christianity as much as you like. It's exactly what I stand for, the fact that you're free to do that. But that's not the view of people who are not following the same traditions as us, that don't come from the Western perspective, that don't come from a background of the Enlightenment, from Western values, from Judeo-Christian values. They come from something else, a value set that is not similar to us and that ultimately isn't conducive to a productive society. We need a much more involved and a much more focused police presence at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. Simply put, this was before my time, but I've been told that there was a great police presence once at Speaker's Corner. Certain police officers are well known for being some of the best, who did an amazing job, and they're well loved by many people at Speaker's Corner. But that doesn't seem to be the case now. What we have now is a very rare and a very small and a very timid, and in all honesty, a very biased police force that, if they are present, they often blame the victim rather than the persecutors, because it's easier to blame the victim, which is often just one person, it's often Hatun Tash, rather than go for the actual source of the problem, which is the 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 predominantly young men who have gathered around this person, who are calling for them to be hurt in some way, to be arrested. They are calling all the worst names you could imagine, simply because they have a religious bias that does not understand tolerance, that does not understand freedom of speech, and doesn't understand freedom of expression. There needs to be a change in the way that the Speaker's Corner is policed. There needs to be a change fundamentally in the hearts of these people to lead them away from this ideology, this religious bias that leads them to become aggressive, violent, dogmatic, fundamentalist people. Ultimately, they should call him Jesus Christ, and they should accept that he is their Lord, not Muhammad. Someone who was sinless, someone who We as Christians would say he rose from the dead, but as a Muslim, you would at least think that he rose to heaven, that he never died. This person is evidently someone who is much better than Muhammad. You should have him as your Lord and follow him. God bless you. Have a nice day.